Hi, it's Rebecca. Today I want to talk about fear. And, I was a crew member. I started flying when I was 20 back in 1967. And one of the things that I learned about my job that I loved was that little element of fear that I had to deal with when I went to work. Because, of course, when you are working at 30,000 feet, you're working in a different kind of environment and you have to know a lot of things about what to do in an emergency. So you think about that every time you go to work. And even though it's the safest way to travel, far safer than being in an automobile, um, but we're prepared when we're crew members. And after 20 years of flying, I took a year off. I actually had applied for a 2-year leave of absence, which I'd gotten. But what happened was I decided to go to a career counseling company to find out if being a flight attendant was really the perfect job for me, or if I should be doing something else after 20 years. So I went and took all these tests, the Myers Briggs test and other tests to determine what my likes and dislikes were, what my personality was like. I remember with the Myers Briggs test, I came out intuitive, intuitive, intuitive. And the counselor told me after he had taken a good look at all the different things that I had been tested on, he said, being a flight attendant is really the perfect job for you. And I said, really? Well, that's a good thing, but what else would I be good for? He said, well, you might like to go out and if you didn't want to do this, go out and sell, high ticket items and meet interesting people. Because I was very much a people person too. I like to have interesting conversations. So I only stayed on leave for 1 year. I called them up at my airline and said, can I come back early? And that was because I also realized there was an element that was missing for me when I was living on the ground, trying to get back into the business world. And that element was that little bit of danger that I had to deal with every time I went to work as a crew member. And it really made me feel more alive, more aware. And you are naturally more aware when you're working in an environment like that. I'm sure, first responders, policemen, firemen, we all crew members, we all have to be more aware of our environments and what's going on because that's just the way it is. And that gives us a heightened sense of things that we get used to. Well, I did go back. And one of the things and I had no fear at all, of course, of flying. I loved it, but it was nice to find out that it was the perfect job for me in many ways. So I flew for 15 more years. But, we're living in a time where people are very, very fearful. And you can either take that fear and let it consume you and turn you into someone who gives up, or you can turn it around and be productive, not be fearful. I mean, are you really afraid of what people tell you when we live in a time when we actually know we get lied to all the time? I mean, that's not a secret anymore. Everyone knows there's a lot of twisting of the facts. That was another thing I learned as a crew member. When I would meet people that were in the news or involved in situations that were newsworthy, and I would talk to them more intimately on the airplane, I would find out a lot of things are not as they appear to be. There's always a story behind the story that we don't get on the news. The news is just very superficial. If you've seen it on the news, it already happened along, it's crazy. It's not like these things are just happening instantaneously either. Many things are planned out for years. So when you become aware of that, you begin to understand that the world is not a place to be living in fear, but to just watch it like in an interesting movie. It's quite a show when you begin to understand that, um, you're here on planet Earth at this time, you're living your life, and it's very interesting. We're living in interesting times, but we don't have to be afraid. We really don't. I mean, I'm a radical thinker. I have overcome my fear of my body. You know, I've been confronted with situations that I had to draw on the divine in order to get myself out of those situations, and it's worked. So there's nothing really to be afraid of. Um, so if you want to understand more, just go within. All the answers are there, and you don't have to be afraid.